There we go. Good afternoon, Family Home Church. Reading Leviticus chapter 25 tonight. Just 25 because it's kind of long. And we're running down to where I do, 2 scriptures a night. And tomorrow night will end Leviticus, being Leviticus 26 and 27 will end tomorrow night. So tonight it's just Leviticus chapter 25. So this should be a little bit shorter than normal, even though chapter 5 is 59, 50, 60 some verses long. Recapping on 23 and 24. 23 had the Day of Atonement, the Feast of Trumpets, Feast of First Fruit, the Passover, unleavened bread. Care of the tabernacle lamps was in 24, the bread of tabernacle, the penalty for blasphemy. And tonight we start off with the Sabbath of the 7th year. And the Lord spoke to Moses of Mount Sinai. And why did we read the whole word, Mr. Dan? Because of 2 Timothy 3:16 through 17, it says all the scriptures inspired by God gives us reproof, correction, doctrine, instructs us in righteousness, so that the man of God could be fully equipped to do all good works. And the word spoke to Moses Mount Sinai, saying, speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and the land shall keep, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath, a solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the land. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. So I've spoken this before about my grandfather being a farmer. Now, he wasn't a mega farmer, like making money off his farm. He did it mainly for helping other people and for growing for food for the family. We would be able to take sacks, giant sacks, like I don't know how many pounds, like 50-pound sacks of potatoes, 100-pound sacks of potatoes, huge sacks of potatoes from Maine to Connecticut when we still lived in Connecticut. And even when we moved down here, he was always trying to give us sacks of potatoes to bring back to Mobile, Alabama. And these weren't little potatoes. These were like the big russet potatoes. He could have made money off of being a potato chip farmer. He really could have. But he told me one day, the reason why this land is not being farmed this year and this part of the land is because this land has been farmed 6 times in a row. And so he's giving a rest. He actually told me that he would go 6 years for one crop, one area, and then go 6 years for another part. And there were times where there were some parts of the land that he would only do every 6 years. He'd do 6 years and then let it rest for a 7th year. And I think that is because of what he said here. And he said as a farmer that was good for the land. And I noticed that in some parts of the country, when we go through places or in some parts of the area that we live in, we'll see property that for 1 year, all of a sudden, that property is not being touched by a farm. Not at all. Not even for their wheat or barley or whatever they're growing or cotton or anything. And then another year later, it starts farming again. So it's something in the process of letting it rest and letting the land refurbish itself. And that's what God was telling them to do. But the 7th there should be a Sabbath and solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. Excuse me. I feel better. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. What grows on its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine, for it is a year of rest for the land. And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwell with you. For your livestock and the beasts you are in your land, that are in your land, all its produce shall be for food. The year of Jubilee, and you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, and the time of the 7th Sabbath of years shall be the 49 years. 7 times 7 is 49. Hey, a little math in the Bible, guys. Little multiplication going on. Then you shall cause the trumpet of the Jubilee, the sound of the 10th day of the 7th month of the Day of Atonement. You shall make the trumpet the sound throughout the land, and you shall consecrate the 15th year and proclaim liberty throughout all the land and all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, and each of you shall return to his possession, and each of you shall return to his family. Now, I heard there's a thing that they call a jubilee in like the area of Fairhope and Gulf Shores, Orange, what's it called? Orange Beach, Alabama. And then said in that area of not Dolphin, I think even Dolphin Island might have it too. But that area of Baldwin County, they said it's a jubilee. They call it a jubilee. It's a bunch of fish. I forgot what kind of fish it is, but it's a bunch of fish that all of a sudden come up all at one time. You can just go out there and put nets and just grab bunches of fish at one time. And someone told me about that, and they said, we're going to contact you. And they never contacted me. They're going to contact you when that is getting ready to happen so we can go out there and grab us a bunch of fish. And it's not the same as this. I don't know why they call it a jubilee, but they do. They call it a jubilee out there. There's a whole bunch of fish that come right up to the shoreline. It's like hundreds of thousands of fish just like getting on the shoreline. You just go up there with nets and just pull them up. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of it, and I'd like to do that one time. But it's different than what he's talking about here. The 15th year shall be a jubilee to you. In it you shall neither sow nor reap what grows on its own accord, nor gather the grapes of your intended vine, for it is jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You shall eat its produce from the field. I need another orange juice. That's better. This is the year Jubilee. Each of you shall return to his possession. And if you sell anything to your neighbor or buy from your neighbor's hand, you shall not oppress one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, you shall buy from the neighbor. And according to the number of years of the crops, he shall sell to you. According to the multitude of years, you shall increase its price, and according to the fewer numbers of years, you shall diminish its price. For he sells to you according to the number of years of the crops. Therefore, you shall not pass. Why'd you do that, computer, while I'm reading? Therefore, you shall not oppress one another, but you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. My computer did something crazy for me over here for a minute. I don't know why. There we go. So you shall observe my statutes and keep my commandment, keep my judgments, and perform them, and you shall dwell in the land in safety. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and dwell there in safety. And if you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year, since we shall not sow nor gather in our produce, then I will command my blessing on you in the 6th year, and you will bring forth produce even for 3 years. And you shall sow in the 8th year and eat one produce until the 9th year, until produce comes in. You shall eat of old harvests. Now, I always wondered about that because they're preserving of, like, especially apples and oranges and stuff. They didn't have refrigeration back then. So I'm curious of how they were able to preserve. Now, grain, easy. Grain preserves even in ancient times. Certain grains were preserved for many years. Long as it was a storage of some kind. But we have canned meats, we have canned fruits, we have canned vegetables. We can freeze stuff for I had a turkey in there for who knows how long before we finally took it out of the freezer and ate it. And it was because it was on sale, and we bought it when we bought like 3 or 4 of them and we didn't use them all. We kept one frozen for Most people don't leave things frozen for that long, but we left it in there for a while. But they didn't have freezers back then. Now I know, like in the 1800s and even in the 16 and 1700s, they used to have what they called ice houses, and they would get blocks of ice. Like you ever saw the movie Frozen when they're cutting down the ice blocks and they're getting the ice off the frozen lakes. They would store those in places and keep, I think, like, what's it called? Not grain, but wheat and stuff on top of it to keep it from thawing out. I don't know all the process of that because I didn't live in that time period, but they would use those and put them deep in the ground so they would stay frozen for a longer time and use those to keep things cold until electricity came out and there was ways to refrigerate things. But how did they do it back in 3000 and 4000 BC? That's what I would like to figure out. I'm not I like history, but I don't know enough about the history on food. Like I said, I know they can store grain, and I know that, like, the Egyptians, people think they like beef jerky and stuff like that. Well, jerky was around even in Egyptian times. That was just dried salted meat, and that would stay a lot longer than. So maybe that's what it was. That's something I need to look up someday, guys. The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine, for you are strangers and sojourners with me, and in all the land of your possessions you shall grant redemption of the land. Excuse me. If one of your brethren becomes poor and has sold some of his possession, and if he's redeeming the relatives become to redeem it, then he may redeem what his brother sold. Or if a man has no one to redeem it, but he himself becomes able to redeem it, then let him count the years since its sale and restore to the remainder of the man to whom he sold it. Then he may return to his possession. But if he is not able to have it restored to him, then what was sold shall remain in the hand of him who brought it unto the year of Jubilee. And in the Jubilee it shall be released, and he shall return to his possession. If a man sells a house, in other words, he can restore. He can get all his land back during the year of Jubilee. He can get his land back without having to pay for it. I'm sorry, this throat doesn't want to work today, but Satan is not going to keep me from reading the word. If a man sells a house in a walled city, then he may redeem it within a whole year after it is sold. Within a full year, he may redeem it. But if it is not redeemed within the space of a full year, then the house and the wall city shall belong permanently to him who bought it throughout his generation. It shall not be released in the Jubilee. However, the houses of the villages which have no wall around them shall be counted as the fields of the country. They may be redeemed and they shall be released in the year of Jubilee. Nevertheless, the cities of the Levites and the house of the cities of their possession, the Levites may redeem at any time. And if because the Levites, they're the priesthood. And if a man purchases a home from the Levites, then the house that was sold in the city of his possession shall be released in the Jubilee. For the house of the cities of the Levites are their possession among the children of Israel. But the field of the common land in their cities may not be sold, for it is the perpetual possession. So if I was in that time, I would not have been buying from a Levite, and you might not get to keep that place. If one of clear that throat out. If one of your brethren becomes poor and falls of poverty among you, then you shall help him like a stranger or a sojourner, that he may live with you. Let me think about that for a minute. We don't do that today, and we need to. The church itself, and there are scriptures in the New Testament that speaks on this. And we're not doing it in the church today. We're not helping those who need help. We see pastors who drive Mercedes Benz and BMWs and Range Rovers and all these expensive vehicles and have nice houses, but then they got people who are suffering and living in small houses, or in some cases not living in a house at all, going to their church and they're not attempting to even help them. And that's the problem with today's church. That is one of the biggest problems we have. And that's why there's so many people out there just saying, screw it, I don't want to be in church. I don't even want to, if that's the way churches are going to be, then I don't want nothing a part of it. And that's what the problem is today. We need to fix that, people. We need to fix that. Take no usury or interest from him, but fear your God, that your brother may live with you. You shall not lend him your money for usury, nor lend him food at a profit. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. In other words, if he's having trouble, you give it to him and don't charge him interest. You give it to him. I've actually borrowed from one of my brothers before, literally, financially. And I said, I'll give you extra back. He always tells me no, not to do that because of these scriptures right here. We don't give to help our family out and then tell them they have to give us more back. That's just as bad as the man who said to the servant, he goes to him and says, give me my $100 back or I'm going to put you in jail. And he puts him in jail, doesn't forgive him. Yet he was forgiven $10,000. That's not the actual amount of money that Jesus used. I'm just using that as an example, but that was in the scriptures where Jesus was talking about a king who forgave a servant, but the servant wouldn't forgive his fellow servant for a mere 100 cents. It was the difference between $10,000 and 100 cents, really. And that's what we're doing today. We're not forgiving them. And as Jesus himself said, if you're not forgiven, your Father won't forgive you. So if you're going to help somebody, don't expect them to give it back. And that goes very true. And I'm going to use myself as an example, not to do this because I don't want to do this, but so you can understand. I have a neighbor I've tried to help out. I've tried to bring him to Christ. I tried everything I can to ensure that he was going to not be hungry and not be without clothing and stuff and water even. And I did all this without any expectation of ever receiving. And now the guy did some bad stuff and got himself put in jail. So though I did everything I thought was right through the word and what God has told me to do, maybe I just planted the seed, or like I told that other pastor, all I'm doing right now is trying to break the ground up so someone else could till it. And if one of your brethren who dwells by you becomes poor, I already said that part, and as a hired servant and a sojourner, he shall be with you, and you shall serve unto the end into the year Jubilee. And then he shall depart from you, he and his children with him, and shall return to his own family. He shall return to the possession of his fathers. For they are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt, and they shall not be sold as slaves. You shall not rule over him with rigor, but you shall fear your God. And as for your male and female slaves, whom you may have, from the nations that are among you, from them you may buy male and female slaves. Moreover, you may buy the children from strangers who dwell among you, and their families who are with you. But they begot in your land, and they shall become your property. And you may take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as a possession. They shall be your permanent slaves. But regarding your brethren, the children of Israel, you shall not rule over one another with rigor. Now I'm going to skip anything about that because of the fact that we don't believe in slavery anymore, because even Jesus speaks on things of that nature. And the thing is, this is how they believed in things back then. So God was giving them, just like I said, the reason he gave you divorce is because of the hardness of your hearts. Well, but he gave them the ability to do this because of their being a stiff-necked person. Now, if a sojourner or a stranger close to you becomes rich and one of your brethren who dwells by him becomes poor, and sells himself to the stranger or sojourner close to you, or to a member of the stranger's family. After he is sold, he may be redeemed again. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle or his uncle's son may redeem him, or anyone who is near of kin to him and family may redeem him. Or if he is able to, he may redeem himself. Thus he shall reckon with him who bought him. The price of his release shall be according to the number of years, for the years that he was sold to him, until the year Jubilee, it shall be according to the time of the hired servant. If there is still money, according to them, he shall repay the price of redemption from money with which he was bought. Excuse me. And if there remain but a few years unto the year of Jubilee, then he shall reckon with him, and according to his years he shall repay him the price of his redemption. He shall be as the year's hired servant, and shall not rule with rigor over him in your sight. And if he is not redeemed in these years, then he shall be released in the year of Jubilee, he and his children with him. For the children of Israel are my servants, are servants to me. They are my servants, whom I brought out of the land. I am the Lord your God. Now we don't look into that to servants and slavery and stuff of that nature anymore, especially in America. At least we're not supposed to. And there's still some who do, and they still talk about it like it's something that happened like 10 years ago when it was hundreds of years ago. Well, not hundreds yet, over hundreds of years, almost 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015. Almost 160 years ago now. And the problem, well, about 160 years. And the problem is we have a lot of things that are trying to be brought up for something that happened 160 some years ago. But even God allowed slavery. So I say it's wrong. Even God today says it's wrong. And like I said, because of the stiffness of their necks, because of the stiffness in the hearts, Moses gave divorce, and God allowed it. And God allowed this to happen. But today it's not to be, because the fulfillment of the law gave us freedom, gave us salvation because of the blood of Jesus. And my throat is gone, about ready to go, and I have to do 1 Corinthians 4, so I'm going to try to take a few minutes. Y'all have a blessed night, and we'll see you again soon. God bless.